My name is Isaac. I am 63 years old. I spent my whole life working with my hands, so my family would never go without. When my son Danny passed away 8 years ago, I made a promise at his graveside. Every single month since then, I have sent his wife $800 to help raise my granddaughter Ellie. I never missed a payment. Not once. But a few months ago, I discovered something that shattered everything I believed about where that money was going. Before we get into this story, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. If you believe that a good heart should never be taken for granted, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Trust me, you are going to want to stay until the very end of this one because what happened next changed my life and my granddaughter's life forever. I grew up in a small town outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, the kind of place where everybody knew your name and your business, whether you wanted them to or not. My father was a carpenter. He built cabinets and shelving units for people around the county, and his hands were always rough and cracked from the wood and the lacquer. My mother worked at a laundry service downtown, pressing shirts and folding linens for families who could afford to pay someone else to do it. We were not poor in the way that makes the news, but we were the kind of family that counted every dollar and never wasted a single bite of food on our plates. I did not go to college. That was never really on the table for a kid like me. When I was 17, I started apprenticing under a plumber named Earl Dawson, who lived 2 streets over from us. Earl was a quiet man with a thick mustache and hands even rougher than my father's. He taught me everything: how to sweat copper pipes, how to diagnose a leak just by listening, how to crawl under a house in the dead of summer when the air was so thick with humidity you could barely breathe. By the time I was 20, I had my own set of tools and a reputation for showing up on time and doing the job right. I met Margaret at a church picnic when I was 23. She was a nursing student at the time, tall with auburn hair that caught the sunlight in a way that made me forget how to form a complete sentence. She laughed at my awkwardness, and something about that laugh told me she was the one. We married a year later in a small ceremony at her parents' backyard. Her father did not think much of a plumber as a son-in-law, but Margaret never cared about titles or paychecks. She cared about character, and she told me that the first night we spent in our tiny apartment on Woodland Avenue. Danny came along when I was 26. Margaret had a difficult labor almost 14 hours, and I sat in that waiting room wearing a groove into the linoleum floor with my pacing. When the nurse finally brought me in, and I saw him for the first time, this tiny red-faced boy with his fists balled up like he was ready to fight the whole world, I felt something crack open inside my chest that I did not even know was closed. I looked at Margaret, exhausted but glowing, and I whispered to her that I would give this boy everything I never had. And I meant it. Every single word. Danny was a curious child from the start. By the time he was 4, he was following me around on small repair jobs, asking questions nonstop. "Daddy, why does the water go that way?" "Daddy, what happens if you turn this one?" I would let him hold the flashlight while I worked under sinks, and he would beam with pride like he was performing the most important job in the world. Margaret used to say that Danny had my hands and her stubbornness, and she was right about both. When Danny was 16, Margaret was diagnosed with breast cancer. It had already spread by the time they caught it. She fought hard for 11 months, but the disease was relentless. I remember the last conversation we had clearly. She was lying in the hospital bed so thin that her wedding ring kept sliding off her finger. She grabbed my hand and said, "Isaac, take care of our boy. Promise me he will turn out good." I promised her. And then she closed her eyes, and the monitors went flat, and the world became a place I no longer recognized. After Margaret passed, It was just Danny and me. I worked 12-hour days, sometimes 14, to keep us afloat. I would come home with my back screaming and my knees aching, and I would sit at the kitchen table checking Danny's homework while eating cold leftovers straight from the container. I made sure he never missed a day of school. I made sure there was always food in the refrigerator. I made sure he had clean clothes and new shoes when the old ones wore out. It was not glamorous. It was not easy. But it was what a father does. Danny graduated from high school and went into the electrical trade. He was good at it, just like he was good at everything he put his hands to. He had a natural understanding of how things connected, how systems worked together. By 22, he was pulling in decent money and had his own small apartment on the other side of town. I was proud of him in a way that words have never been able to capture properly. He met Lauren at a birthday gathering for a mutual friend. Danny called me that night, and I could hear the grin in his voice even through the phone. He said, "Dad, I met someone tonight. She is different." I asked him what he meant by different. He said, "She actually listens when I talk. Like really listens." That told me a lot about the kind of women he had been meeting before her. The first time Danny brought Lauren to my house for dinner, I cooked pot roast Margaret's recipe. Lauren walked in wearing a blue sundress, and she had this easy smile that put you at ease right away. She complimented the food, asked about the photos on the mantel, and laughed at my bad jokes without making it seem forced. When she left that evening, Danny lingered at the door and asked me what I thought. I told him she seemed like good people. He smiled so wide I thought his face might split apart. They married when Danny was 25. Small wedding, not unlike mine and Margaret's. I stood as Danny's best man and gave a short toast about how his mother would have loved Lauren and how proud I was of the man he had become. I meant every word of that, too. A year after the wedding, Ellie was born. I drove to the hospital so fast I probably broke 3 traffic laws. When the nurse placed that baby girl in my arms for the first time, I looked down at her face and saw Danny's eyes staring back at me. The same dark brown, the same little crinkle at the corners even when she was not smiling. I cried. It was the first time I had cried since Margaret's funeral. Danny put his hand on my shoulder and said, "She has got your chin, Dad." And we both laughed through the tears. For 3 years, everything was beautiful. Sunday dinners at Danny and Lauren's place, pushing Ellie on the swing set in their backyard, reading her bedtime stories and doing all the silly voices until she giggled so hard she got the hiccups. I finally felt like the universe had given me something back after taking so much away. Then one Tuesday night in November, my phone rang at 2 in the morning. I remember looking at the clock on my nightstand, those red numbers glowing in the dark. It was a state trooper. There had been an accident on Route 41. A tractor trailer had crossed the median in heavy rain. Danny's truck was hit on the driver's side. He was pronounced dead at the scene. He was 28 years old. I do not remember hanging up the phone. I do not remember how it ended up on the floor. I do not remember my knees giving out, or how long I sat on the cold bedroom floor in the dark. I just remember a sound, this low, awful sound, and then realizing it was coming from me. The funeral was on a Saturday. Gray sky, cold wind. Ellie was too young to understand what was happening. She kept tugging on my hand and asking where Daddy went. I could not answer her. I just held her hand and stared at the casket and tried to keep standing. After everyone left, after the last casserole dish was dropped off and the last condolence card was placed on the kitchen counter, I sat alone in my living room for 3 days. I did not eat. I did not answer the phone. I barely moved. The house was so quiet, I could hear the clock ticking from 2 rooms away. On the third day, I saw a photograph of Ellie on the bookshelf. She was smiling in it, wearing a little yellow dress Margaret would have loved, and something in me shifted. It was not dramatic. It was not some Hollywood moment of clarity. It was just a simple, quiet thought Danny would want me to take care of his little girl. So the next morning, I sat down at my kitchen table and figured out the numbers. My pension from 36 years of plumbing work came to about $2,400 a month. I calculated what Lauren would need to help with groceries, Ellie's clothes, school supplies, and a little extra for emergencies. $800. That was nearly a third of my income. It meant no eating out, no new clothes for myself, no fixing the spot on the roof where the rain leaked through into the hallway closet every spring. I did not hesitate. Not for 1 second. I went to the bank that afternoon and set up an automatic transfer. $800 every single month to Lauren's account. And I made a silent promise to Danny as I stood at his grave later that evening. I said, "I will take care of your daughter until I cannot breathe anymore, son. You have my word." For the first couple of years, things seemed right. Lauren called me every Sunday like clockwork. She would tell me about Ellie's week, what new words she was learning, how she had started dancing around the living room whenever music came on. Lauren would send me photos, too. Ellie at the park. Ellie covered in finger paint. Ellie wearing a pair of oversized sunglasses making a silly face. Those pictures were the highlight of my week. I taped every single one of them to the refrigerator until there was barely any white space left. Lauren invited me over for dinner regularly during those early years. I would drive the 40 minutes to her place every other Sunday, and we would sit at the kitchen table eating spaghetti or chicken casserole while Ellie babbled in her high chair. After dinner, I would take Ellie out to the backyard and push her on the swing set Danny had built the summer before he died. I can still hear her squealing, "Higher, Grandpa, higher." Those evenings were the closest thing to happiness I had felt since losing Danny. Around the third year, I started noticing small changes. The Sunday phone calls became every other Sunday, then once a month. When I called Lauren, she would answer, but keep the conversations short. "Everything is fine, Dad Isaac. Ellie is good. We are just busy." I understood busy. Raising a child alone is exhausting. I did it myself after Margaret passed, so I gave Lauren all the grace in the world. By year 4, the dinner invitations stopped completely. I would suggest coming over and Lauren would say the house was a mess, or Ellie had a cold, or she had plans that weekend. I tried not to read too much into it. People need their space. I kept telling myself that. Then came Ellie's 7th birthday. I spent 2 weeks searching for the perfect gift. Ellie had told me during one of our phone conversations that purple was her absolute favorite color in the entire universe. Those were her exact words. So I found a beautiful purple bicycle at the sporting goods store, the kind with streamers on the handlebars and a little bell. I even had the store put a white basket on the front, because Ellie had mentioned she liked collecting wildflowers on walks. I loaded that bicycle into my truck and drove the 40 minutes to Lauren's house with the windows down and the radio playing. When I pulled into the driveway, I could hear music coming from the backyard. Children laughing, adults talking. There was a birthday party happening. Nobody had told me. I carried the bicycle to the front door and knocked. Lauren opened it, and the look on her face was not happiness or surprise. It was irritation. She tried to hide it, but I have been reading faces for 63 years, and I know what irritation looks like even when someone pastes a smile over it. "Oh, Dad Isaac," she said. "Today is just a small thing. Mostly Ellie's school friends and some of the neighborhood moms. You know how it is." I did not know how it was. I had no idea there was a party at all. I left the bicycle by the front door. Lauren said she would bring it inside later. She did not invite me in. I stood on that porch for a moment, listening to my granddaughter laughing somewhere in the backyard at a birthday party I was not invited to, and then I walked back to my truck and drove home. The drive back was quiet. I turned the radio off. I kept telling myself it was not personal. Lauren was probably overwhelmed with party planning. Kids' parties are chaotic. There were a dozen reasonable explanations. I chose to believe every single one of them because the alternative was too painful to consider. About 6 months after the birthday incident, Ellie called me on the iPad I had given her the previous Christmas. It was a weekday evening, and her face popped up on my screen with that big grin that always reminded me of Danny. We talked about school and her teacher and a squirrel she had seen doing something funny in the yard. Then casually, the way children share information without understanding its weight, she said, "Grandpa, Uncle Derek comes to our house a lot now. He is really tall and he has a red truck." I was not surprised that Lauren had started seeing someone. It had been 5 years since Danny passed. Lauren was young, only 31 at the time. She deserved companionship. She deserved to be happy. I told myself that sincerely, and I believed it. But over the following months, Ellie kept mentioning Derek in our calls. Each time the details added up in a way that started to form a picture I did not like. Grandpa, Mommy, and Uncle Derek went to eat at the fancy restaurant downtown. I stayed with Mrs. Calloway next door. Grandpa, Mommy bought Uncle Derek a really nice watch for his birthday. It was shiny. Grandpa, Mommy, and Uncle Derek went to the cabin in Gatlinburg last weekend. I stayed with Mrs. Calloway again. Gatlinburg is a resort town in the Smoky Mountains. Cabin rentals there are not cheap, especially on weekends. A nice watch is not cheap either. And dinners at the fancy restaurant downtown, the one Ellie was referring to, was a steakhouse called Henderson's, where the cheapest entree runs about $45. I started doing math in my head that I did not want to do. $800 a month from me. Lauren's salary from her job at the insurance office. Where was all that money going if Ellie was being left with the neighbor woman every weekend? But I stopped myself. I physically shook my head as if I could rattle the suspicion loose. That money was a gift. I gave it freely. Lauren had every right to spend it however she needed. Who was I to question a grown woman's financial decisions? I was just the old man who wrote the checks. I pushed the doubts down deep and kept sending the money. Every single month. Like clockwork. Because a promise is a promise, and Isaac Coleman does not break promises. But there was one phone call that changed everything. One call that pulled all those buried doubts right back up to the surface where I could no longer ignore them. It came on a Wednesday night, and the voice on the other end was small, shaky, and scared. It was 9:14 p.m. on a Wednesday when my phone lit up with Ellie's name. She was 10 years old by then, and she usually called me on weekends, so a midweek call was unusual. I picked up immediately. "Grandpa." Her voice was thin, barely above a whisper. "Ellie, sweetheart, what is wrong?" "Grandpa, I am hungry. Mommy left this morning with Uncle Derek and she has not come back. There is nothing in the refrigerator." My chest tightened. "What do you mean, nothing? What about Mrs. Calloway? Is she there with you?" "Mrs. Calloway moved away last month, Grandpa. I am by myself." A 10-year-old girl, alone in a house since morning, hungry, no adult anywhere in sight. It was a school night. I grabbed my keys off the counter so fast I knocked over my coffee mug. I did not stop to clean it up. I was in my truck and pulling out of the driveway within 90 seconds. The drive to Lauren's house usually took 40 minutes. I made it in 28. When I pulled up, the house was dark, every window black. The porch light was not even on. I walked up the steps, and Ellie opened the front door before I could knock. She must have been watching for my headlights. She was wearing pajamas that looked too small for her, the pants stopping a good 3 inches above her ankles. Her hair was tangled. She looked at me with those brown eyes, Danny's eyes, and she did not cry. She just said, "I knew you would come, Grandpa." That sentence nearly broke me right there on the porch. I went inside and turned on the lights. The living room looked different from what I remembered. There was a massive flat-screen television mounted on the wall, the kind that costs well over $1,000. The couch was new too, dark leather with chrome legs, the sort you see in furniture store showrooms. There was a gaming console beneath the television with controllers and headsets scattered around it. The kitchen had a new espresso machine on the counter that looked like it belonged in a coffee shop. Then I opened the refrigerator. Inside, I found 1 carton of milk with an expiration date that had passed 9 days ago, 3 packets of soy sauce, a jar of pickles, with maybe 2 pickles left, and nothing else. I checked the pantry. A box of stale crackers and a can of tomato paste. That was it. I went to Ellie's room. Her bed had sheets that were pilling and worn thin. Her pillow was flat as a board. Her closet had clothes, but most of them were from at least a year ago, tight in the shoulders and short in the sleeves. I noticed her school shoes by the door. The rubber at the toe of the left shoe had separated from the canvas and was being held together with a piece of tape. Shoes held together with tape. While a brand new leather couch sat in the living room and a television the size of a small billboard hung on the wall. I took Ellie to a diner about 10 minutes away. She ordered a grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup and a glass of chocolate milk. She ate everything so fast, I had to tell her to slow down, or she would get a stomachache. Then she ordered a second grilled cheese. I let her have whatever she wanted, and I sat across from her trying to keep my face calm while something volcanic was building inside me. Between bites, she talked. Children talk when they feel safe, and Ellie felt safe with me. Grandpa Mommy and Uncle Derek go out to eat a lot, but they say the restaurants do not allow kids, so I stay home. Uncle Derek said I am old enough to take care of myself. She took a sip of chocolate milk. Mommy got Uncle Derek new sneakers last week, the ones with the red stripe. He was really happy. I asked Mommy if I could get new shoes too because mine have a hole, and she said there is no extra money right now. No extra money. $800 a month from me. Lauren's full-time salary. And there is no extra money for a child's shoes. I drove Ellie back to the house and stopped at a grocery store on the way. I bought enough food to fill that empty refrigerator and pantry. Bread, peanut butter, fruit, milk, eggs, chicken, rice, vegetables, cereal, juice boxes. I spent $140. That is more than I normally spend on my own groceries for 2 weeks. At the house, I put everything away while Ellie sat at the kitchen table doing homework she said was due the next morning. I helped her with a few math problems and made sure she brushed her teeth and got into bed. I stayed. Lauren came home at 10:47 p.m. I know the exact time because I looked at the clock on the microwave when I heard the front door open. She walked in with Derek behind her. Lauren was carrying shopping bags from a clothing store. Derek was wearing a leather jacket I had never seen before. Lauren stopped cold when she saw me sitting at the kitchen table. Just Isaac. "What are you doing here?" "Lauren, why was Ellie alone in this house since this morning? Why was there nothing for her to eat?" Her face shifted through several expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, then embarrassment, then something harder. Defensiveness. I had errands to run. Derek needed help with some things. Ellie knows how to take care of herself for a few hours. A few hours, she called me at 9 o'clock at night, Lauren. She had not eaten all day. Derek stood behind Lauren with his arms crossed. He was a big man, maybe 6'2", with a goatee and a look on his face that suggested I was an inconvenience. He did not say a word. He just looked at me the way you might look at a stray dog that wandered onto your property. "Lauren," I said, keeping my voice as level as I could because Ellie was sleeping down the hall. "We need to have a serious conversation about Ellie's care." Lauren's jaw tightened. "Dad Isaac, I appreciate everything you do, but Ellie is my daughter. I know what is best for her. You do not need to worry so much." I looked at the shopping bags in her hand. I looked at Derek's leather jacket. I looked at the $1,000 television and the leather couch and the gaming console. And then I thought about the tape holding my granddaughter's shoe together. I did not raise my voice. I did not make a scene. I just said, "Good night, Lauren," and I walked out the front door. The drive home was the longest 40 minutes of my life. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. But it was not anger driving that grip. It was the crushing weight of realization. 8 years, $76,800. And my granddaughter was hungry, wearing clothes that did not fit with shoes held together by tape, while 2 adults lived comfortably on money that was meant for her. I did not sleep that night. I sat in my recliner until the sun came up, staring at the wall, thinking. I am not a man who acts on impulse. 36 years of plumbing taught me that you diagnose the problem thoroughly before you pick up a wrench. You figure out where the leak is coming from, how bad the damage is, and what it will take to fix it. Only then do you start cutting pipe. So that is exactly what I did. Over the next 3 weeks, I began paying closer attention to things I had been deliberately ignoring for years. I started with Ruth Pemberton, who had lived 2 doors down from Lauren for over a decade. Ruth was a retired school teacher in her mid-70s, sharp as a tack, and observant in the way that only longtime neighbors can be. I brought her a loaf of banana bread one afternoon, and we sat on her front porch drinking sweet tea while I steered the conversation toward Lauren's household. Ruth did not need much prompting. She had been wanting to tell someone for a while. I could see it in the way the words came rushing out. She told me that Lauren and Derek had bought a brand new SUV about 4 months earlier, a silver Chevrolet Tahoe that sat in the driveway gleaming like a showroom display. She told me Derek had not held a job the entire time he had been around as far as she could tell. He came and went at odd hours, but never in work clothes and never carrying a lunch pail or tool bag. She said Lauren spent several evenings a week out of the house, and on those nights, Ruth would sometimes see Ellie's bedroom light on late long past any reasonable bedtime for a child her age. Ruth also mentioned that Ellie walked home from the bus stop alone every afternoon, even though Lauren's car was parked in the garage. "Isaac," Ruth said, setting her tea glass down with a look that mixed sadness and frustration, "I have wanted to say something for months, but she is not my family. I did not feel it was my place." The next thing I did was contact Ellie's school. I drove over one morning and asked to speak with her teacher. The front office directed me to Mrs. Patterson, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses perched on top of her head and a kind but honest demeanor. She knew who I was because Ellie talked about me frequently, apparently. That detail alone made my eyes sting. Mrs. Patterson closed her classroom door and spoke carefully but plainly. She said Ellie was a bright girl, well-behaved, always polite. But in recent months, she had noticed some concerning patterns. Ellie often arrived at school looking exhausted with circles under her eyes, like she was not sleeping enough. Her packed lunches had deteriorated steadily. Some days it was just a single slice of bread with nothing on it. Other days she brought nothing at all, and the school provided her a free meal through the assistance program. Mrs. Patterson said she had called Lauren twice to discuss these observations. The first time Lauren's phone rang and went to voicemail. The second time Lauren answered, said she would handle it, and hung up. Nothing changed after either call. I thanked Mrs. Patterson and asked her to document everything she had told me. She said she already had. She had been keeping notes because she was worried enough to involve the school counselor. My next conversation was with Gordon Hadley, an old friend who worked in the commercial insurance industry. Gordon knew everyone in Knox County, and more importantly, he knew how to find things out without making a lot of noise. I asked him what he could tell me about a man named Derek Slattery. Gordon made a couple of calls and got back to me 2 days later. Derek Slattery was 34 years old. He had been fired from an auto parts warehouse 18 months ago for drinking on the job. Before that, he had been let go from a construction company for repeated no-shows. He had no current employment on record. He did, however, have a credit card balance of over $11,000 and a personal loan that was 3 months behind on payments. So this was the man living in my son's house, sleeping in a bed, my $800 a month, helped pay for wearing clothes my money likely bought while my granddaughter ate bread for lunch and taped her shoes together. I sat at my kitchen table that evening and pulled out the shoebox where I kept copies of every bank transfer receipt. I am old-fashioned that way. I print everything. I lined them up in rows across the table month by month, year by year. 96 transfers. $76,800. I looked at those numbers for a long time. Then I looked around my own kitchen. The faucet that dripped because I had not replaced the cartridge. The patch of ceiling that was stained brown from the roof leak I could not afford to fix. The boots by the back door that I had resoled twice because new ones cost $80. I had lived like this willingly, gladly for 8 years. Not because I had to. Because I chose to. Because my granddaughter needed that money. Except my granddaughter never got that money. Not really. There was one more thing I discovered that hit harder than all the rest. When I was at the school speaking with Mrs. Patterson, she referred to Ellie by her full name as listed in the school records. She said Ellie Slattery, not Ellie Coleman. Slattery. Derek's last name. Lauren had changed my granddaughter's last name in the school system. My son Danny's surname, the name I gave him, the name he carried with pride, had been erased and replaced with the last name of a man who drank on the job and could not pay his own credit card bill. I did not say anything to Mrs. Patterson in that moment. I just nodded and thanked her and walked to my truck. I sat in the parking lot for 15 minutes, both hands flat on the steering wheel, breathing slowly. That one detail, more than the empty refrigerator, more than the taped shoes, more than the leather couch, that one detail cut the deepest. A few days later, I picked Ellie up after school. I told Lauren I wanted to take her for ice cream, and Lauren agreed, probably because it meant she had a free afternoon. At the ice cream shop, Ellie ordered a scoop of strawberry and a waffle cone, and we sat on a bench outside. She talked the way she always did with me, freely and without filters. She told me that Derek yelled at her sometimes when she made too much noise while he was playing video games. She said one time she accidentally spilled a glass of water on the coffee table and Derek threw the television remote against the wall so hard it broke into pieces. She said she mostly stayed in her room when Derek was home because it was easier that way. Then she said something that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. She looked up at me with ice cream on her chin and said, "Grandpa, I miss Daddy so much. I wish he was still here. Everything was better when Daddy was here." I pulled her close and wrapped my arms around her. I pressed my face against the top of her head so she could not see what was happening to my eyes. I held her like that until the ice cream started dripping down her hand, and she laughed and said, "Grandpa, you are squishing my cone." That night after I brought Ellie back to Lauren's house, I went home and sat in front of the shelf where I keep photographs of Margaret and Danny. I placed their pictures side by side, and I spoke to them both out loud in the quiet of my empty house. Margaret, Danny, I have made a terrible mistake. I thought sending money was enough. I thought if I kept writing checks, Ellie would be taken care of. But checks do not tuck a child into bed at night. Checks do not make sure there is food on the table. Checks do not protect a little girl from a man who throws things when he is angry. I should have been paying closer attention. I should have been there more. But I am paying attention now. And I am going to fix this. The following Monday morning, I put on a clean shirt and drove downtown to the law office of Bradley Cooper, an attorney who specialized in family law. His office was on the second floor of an old brick building on Gay Street above a barber shop. The waiting room smelled like coffee and printer ink. Bradley was a man in his late 40s, lean and precise in the way he spoke, like every word had been weighed on a scale before he let it leave his mouth. I sat across from his desk and told him everything, from the monthly payments to the empty refrigerator, to the taped shoes, to Ellie's last name being changed, to the incident with Derek and the remote control. Bradley listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he set his pen down and looked at me directly. Mr. Coleman, based on what you are describing, you may have grounds to petition for temporary guardianship of your granddaughter. Tennessee law allows a grandparent to seek custody if they can demonstrate that the child's current living environment poses a risk to her welfare. The evidence you are describing neglect, inadequate supervision, possible emotional abuse from the mother's partner. These are factors a judge will take very seriously. I asked him what it would cost. He quoted me a figure that made my stomach drop. It was most of what I had left in savings money I had set aside for emergencies and eventually for my own funeral expenses, so that nobody else would have to bear that cost. I told him I would pay it. Every cent. Bradley outlined the process. We would need to file a petition with the Knox County Juvenile Court. We would need to present evidence of the conditions Ellie was living in. He suggested I gather as much documentation as possible. Witness statements, school records, my financial records, showing the monthly payments, anything that painted a clear picture. I went to work. Ruth Pemberton agreed to write a formal statement describing what she had observed over the past year. Mrs. Patterson provided the school's records, showing Ellie's pattern of fatigue and insufficient meals. She also provided documentation from the school counselor, who had flagged concerns. Gordon Hadley gave me a printed summary of Derek's employment history and outstanding debts obtained through public records. I organized every single bank transfer receipt into a chronological folder, 96 of them, each one representing a month of sacrifice. While I was assembling all of this, Lauren found out. I do not know exactly how. Perhaps Ruth mentioned something inadvertently, or perhaps the school notified Lauren that her daughter's records had been accessed. Whatever the cause, Lauren called me on a Thursday evening, and she was furious. "Dad, Isaac, what are you doing? Why are you going around talking to Ellie's teacher and the neighbors? Are you trying to make me look like a bad mother? Is that what this is?" I kept my voice steady. "Lauren, I am not trying to make you look like anything. I am trying to make sure Ellie is safe and cared for. She is safe. She is cared for. She is my daughter, not yours. You are her grandfather, not her parent. You do not get to make decisions about her life. Lauren, when I came to your house 3 weeks ago, your daughter was alone, hungry, and scared. The refrigerator was empty. Her shoes had tape on them. Meanwhile, there is a brand new television on the wall, and a man living in your house who does not contribute a single dollar. I have been sending you $800 every month for 8 years, and I need to know that money is being used for Ellie." The line went silent for a long moment. When Lauren spoke again, her voice had changed. Colder, harder. If you do not stop this, I will take Ellie and move somewhere you will never find us. I will disappear, Dad Isaac, and you will never see her again. She hung up before I could respond. 2 days later, my phone rang from an unfamiliar number. It was Derek. His voice was low and thick and carried the casual menace of a man who was used to pushing people around. Listen, old man, Lauren told me about the little investigation you are running. I am going to tell you this once. Back off. Stop calling the school. Stop talking to the neighbors. Stop making problems. You had a good deal going, sending your little checks and playing grandpa on holidays. Do not ruin it by being nosy. Because if you keep this up, I promise you, things are going to get very unpleasant for you. I listened to every word without interrupting. When he finished, I said nothing for 5 full seconds. Then I said, "Are you done?" And I hung up. I called Bradley that same evening and told him about both conversations. He was not surprised. Mr. Coleman, this is exactly what happens in these situations. They are trying to intimidate you into backing down. The threat to relocate with Ellie, the implied physical threat from Derek, these actually work in our favor. This is a pattern of obstruction and intimidation. Document the calls. Note the date, time, and what was said. I did exactly that. I wrote it all down in the same neat handwriting I had used to fill out work orders for 36 years. The next week, Lauren blocked my phone number. Ellie stopped calling. The iPad I had given her was apparently taken away. I was completely cut off from my granddaughter. And for several days, the fear of that emptiness almost made me quit. Almost made me think maybe I should just go back to sending the checks and keeping my mouth shut and accepting whatever crumbs of access Lauren felt like tossing my way. But then I remembered Ellie sitting on that bench with ice cream on her chin, saying she wished her daddy was still here. And I remembered the promise I made at Danny's grave. And I knew that quitting was not an option. Not for Isaac Coleman. Bradley filed the petition for temporary guardianship the following Monday. I signed my name at the bottom of the document, and my hand trembled as I did it. Not from fear. From the understanding that I had just crossed a line from which there was no returning. Everything after this moment would be different. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in early April. Knox County Juvenile Court Judge Eleanor Whitfield presiding. I woke up at 4:30 that morning, even though the hearing was not until 9. I showered, shaved carefully, and put on the only suit I owned. It was the dark navy suit I had worn to Danny's funeral 8 years earlier. Margaret had helped me pick it out originally for a wedding we attended back in 2004. I adjusted the tie 3 times before I got it right. Bradley picked me up at 8:15. On the drive to the courthouse, he went over the key points one more time. Stick to the facts. Do not let emotion take over. Answer only what is asked. Let the evidence speak. The courthouse was a large stone building with tall columns out front and an American flag hanging limp in the still morning air. I had never been inside a courtroom before in my entire life. The hallway smelled like floor wax and old wood. Our hearing was in Courtroom B, a medium-sized room with fluorescent lighting and wooden benches that reminded me of church pews. Lauren was already there when we walked in. She was sitting at the other table with her attorney, a younger man in a gray suit, who kept checking his phone. Lauren looked different from the last time I had seen her. She was dressed conservatively, a dark blouse and slacks, minimal jewelry. She had clearly been coached on how to present herself. Derek was sitting in the gallery behind Lauren. He was wearing a button-down shirt that looked brand new and ill-fitting, like it had been purchased specifically for this occasion. He avoided eye contact with me entirely. Judge Whitfield entered, and everyone stood, She was a woman in her early 60s with silver hair pulled back and reading glasses that she wore low on her nose. Her expression was neutral but attentive, the kind of face that suggested she had heard every story imaginable and was immune to theatrics but deeply responsive to truth. Bradley presented our case first. He was methodical and calm. He introduced the 96 bank transfer receipts, showing 8 years of consistent financial support from me to Lauren, totaling $76,800. He presented Mrs. Patterson's written statement and school records, documenting Ellie's deteriorating condition at school. He submitted Ruth Pemberton's statement about the household dynamics she had observed. He included Gordon Hadley's findings on Derek's employment history and financial problems. He presented the evidence that Lauren had changed Ellie's last name to Slattery without informing or consulting me. And he described the night I found Ellie alone and hungry and the subsequent threatening phone calls from both Lauren and Derek. Lauren's attorney countered. He portrayed Lauren as a devoted single mother who was doing her best under difficult circumstances. He argued that I was an overbearing in-law who could not accept that Lauren had moved on with her life. He suggested that my concern was less about Ellie's welfare and more about control and resentment toward Derek. He described the monthly payments as voluntary gifts that carried no strings and gave me no authority over Lauren's parenting decisions. Lauren took the stand briefly. She said she loved Ellie more than anything. She said the night I found Ellie alone was an isolated incident, a miscommunication about childcare arrangements. She said Derek was a good man who was looking for work and who cared about Ellie. I watched her speak and I looked for Danny in her face, some trace of the woman my son had loved. I could not find it. Then came the moment that changed everything. Judge Whitfield ordered a private interview between Ellie and the court-appointed guardian ad litem, a social worker named Sandra Rowan. This interview took place in a separate room away from both parties. It lasted about 45 minutes. I sat on that hard wooden bench during those 45 minutes and stared at the clock on the wall. Each minute felt like it weighed 10 pounds. Bradley sat beside me, calm and still. Lauren sat across the aisle, fidgeting with the clasp on her purse. Derek stared at the floor. When Sandra Rowan returned to the courtroom, she submitted her report to Judge Whitfield. I could not hear what was in it yet, but I watched the judge's face as she read it, and I saw her jaw tighten slightly and her eyes narrow. That was enough to tell me that whatever Ellie had said, it mattered. Judge Whitfield called both attorneys to the bench for a brief sidebar. Then she addressed the courtroom. The guardian ad litem's report indicates that the child disclosed consistent patterns of being left without adequate supervision, insufficient meals on a regular basis, and a home environment where she does not feel emotionally safe due to the behavior of the mother's partner. The child expressed a clear and repeated desire to live with her grandfather, whom she described as the person she trusts most in the world. The judge paused and looked directly at Lauren. Then she looked at me. The court is granting temporary guardianship of the minor child to the petitioner Isaac Coleman effective immediately. The Department of Children's Services will conduct a full investigation of the home environment at the mother's residence. A review hearing will be scheduled in 90 days. I heard the words. I understood them. But for several seconds, they did not feel real. Bradley put his hand on my shoulder and said quietly, "We did it, Isaac." Lauren broke down at the other table. Her attorney put a hand on her arm. Derek stood up abruptly and walked out of the courtroom without a word to anyone, without looking at Lauren, without looking back. And then the bailiff brought Ellie in from the side room where she had been waiting. She saw me and she ran. She ran across that courtroom floor and threw her arms around my waist and pressed her face against my stomach and held on like I was the only solid thing in a world that had been shifting under her feet for years. I put my hands on her shoulders and leaned down and said quietly, so only she could hear, "I am here now, sweetheart. You do not have to worry about anything anymore." We walked out of that courthouse together. I held her hand, and she held mine, and neither of us let go all the way to the truck. I opened the door for her, and she climbed into the back seat and buckled her seatbelt, and looked out the window with an expression that was not quite happiness yet, but was something close to it. Relief, maybe. Or the first faint color returning to a picture that had been gray for too long. On the drive home, I stopped at a shoe store. I bought Ellie a new pair of sneakers, white with purple laces. She chose them herself. When she put them on and looked down at her feet, she wiggled her toes inside them and said, "These fit perfect, Grandpa." That night, I made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. The same meal from the diner that night. I found her alone. But this time we ate at my kitchen table in my house, which was now her house too. After dinner, she asked if she could call me before bed every night, and I told her she did not need to call because I would be right down the hall. She smiled at that. A real smile. The first real one I had seen from her in a long time. That was 6 months ago. Ellie has been living with me since that Tuesday in April, and I can tell you that this old house has never felt more alive. The first few weeks were an adjustment for both of us. Ellie was used to fending for herself, and it took time for her to understand that she did not need to anymore. The first morning she woke up before me and tried to make her own breakfast because she did not want to bother me. I found her standing on a step stool reaching for the cereal box on the top shelf. I told her from now on breakfast was my job, and I moved the cereal to a shelf she could reach. I learned to make French toast because she told me it was her favorite. I am not a great cook, never have been, but I can follow a recipe and I can crack eggs without getting shells in the batter, which is apparently a skill not everyone possesses. Every Saturday morning, we have French toast with maple syrup and sliced strawberries, and Ellie sets the table while I cook. She puts out napkins folded into triangles because she saw it in a movie once and decided that was the proper way to do it. I do not argue with her on this point. I taught myself to braid her hair by watching tutorial videos on the computer. My fingers are thick from decades of gripping wrenches and pipe cutters, and the first few attempts looked like something you might find in a bird's nest after a windstorm. But Ellie was patient with me. She would sit on the kitchen stool and talk about her day while I fumbled with rubber bands and bobby pins. After about 2 weeks, I could manage a decent braid. Not salon quality, but good enough that Ellie wore it to school proudly and told her friends her grandpa did it. Her grades improved almost immediately. Mrs. Patterson called me at the end of the first month to say that Ellie was like a different child. Alert, engaged, participating in class, turning in homework on time. She even joined the school art club and started painting watercolors of flowers and mountains, and once a picture of a house with 2 stick figures out front that she labeled "Me and Grandpa." I framed that painting and hung it in the hallway where I see it every single morning. I also found something I had not expected: community. A man at church named Harold Givens ran a volunteer group that repaired homes for elderly and disabled residents who could not afford it. Harold was 71, built like a fire hydrant, and had a laugh that could rattle windows. He had heard about my situation through the church grapevine and invited me to join the crew. I started going on Saturdays when Ellie had art club. It felt good to use my hands again for something beyond just surviving. Fixing a leaky roof for an 80-year-old widow. Replacing a broken ramp for a veteran in a wheelchair. Reminding myself that there is still good work to be done in this world. Through the volunteer group, I met a woman named Gloria Trent. She was 60, recently widowed, and she was raising her 2 grandchildren after her own daughter struggled with addiction. Gloria had kind eyes and a direct way of speaking that reminded me a little of Margaret. We started talking after volunteer sessions, first about grandchildren and logistics, then about everything else. Grief, loneliness, the strange second chapter of life that nobody prepares you for. I'm not ready to call it anything more than friendship, and maybe it will never be more than that. But having someone who genuinely understands what your days look like, that is worth more than I can properly express. As for Lauren, the Department of Children's Services completed their investigation within 2 months. They found the home environment lacking in several areas and required Lauren to attend a parenting education program and ongoing counseling sessions. Derek left shortly after the court hearing, without my $800 flowing in every month, and with the pressure of a DCS investigation, whatever appeal the arrangement held for him apparently evaporated. Last I heard from Ruth, he moved out of state. Lauren did not fight to keep him. About 4 months after the hearing, Lauren called me. It was a Sunday afternoon. Ellie was in the yard chasing a butterfly, and I was sitting on the porch watching her when my phone rang. Lauren was crying before she even said hello. She said she was sorry. She said she knew she had failed Ellie. She said losing Derek had forced her to look at the choices she had made, and she did not like what she saw. She asked if I hated her. I thought about that question for a long moment. I thought about the empty refrigerator and the taped shoes and the birthday party I was not invited to and the phone call where she threatened to take Ellie away forever. I thought about all of it. And then I said, Lauren, I do not hate you. I have never hated you. Danny loved you, and you gave him Ellie, and for that alone I will always be grateful. But love without accountability is not love. It is just enabling. I had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting my granddaughter, and I chose Ellie. I will always choose Ellie. Lauren asked if she could see Ellie. I said yes under conditions. We arranged supervised visits every other Saturday. The first visit was awkward. Ellie was cautious, holding my hand tightly when Lauren arrived. But children have a capacity for forgiveness that adults often lack, and by the third visit, Ellie was showing Lauren her watercolor paintings and telling her about art club. It is a slow process. Trust broken that thoroughly does not rebuild overnight. But the foundation is there, and that is more than I expected. Last week I drove out to the cemetery. I brought fresh flowers for both Margaret and Danny. White daisies for Margaret, because those were her favorite, and sunflowers for Danny, because he always said they were the only flower tough enough to look at the sun all day without flinching. That was such a Danny thing to say. I sat on the bench beside their headstones, and I talked to them the way I always do. I told Margaret that Ellie was doing beautifully in school, and that she had inherited Margaret's stubbornness in the best possible way. I told Danny that his daughter asked questions nonstop, just like he did as a little boy. She asked me yesterday how the dishwasher works, Danny. I had to explain the whole water pump system to a 10-year-old. She actually understood it. Then I sat quietly for a while, just listening to the wind move through the oak trees above me. I kept my promise, I finally said. It took me too long to see what was happening, and I should have acted sooner. But I kept my promise. She is safe now. She is happy. And she knows she is loved. I have spent a lot of years carrying things. Grief, responsibility, other people's expectations, the weight of promises made to people who are no longer here to hear them. And if this whole experience has taught me one thing, it is this: being kind does not mean being blind. Loving someone does not mean accepting everything they do without question. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stand up, look the situation square in the face and say, "No, this is not right, and I am going to do something about it." I spent 8 years writing checks and believing that money was enough. It was not. Money does not read bedtime stories. Money does not notice when a child's shoes are falling apart. Money does not hold a scared little girl and tell her everything is going to be okay. Presence does that. Attention does that. Courage does that. If you are listening to this, and you are in a situation where your generosity is being taken for granted, where your good heart is being used as someone else's resource, while the people you are trying to protect suffer quietly in the background, I want you to hear me clearly. You are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to investigate. You are allowed to say enough. Doing so is not betrayal. It is not cruelty. It is the deepest form of love there is. I am 63 years old. I live in a small house in Tennessee with a 10-year-old girl who folds napkins into triangles and paints watercolors of mountains. My knees ache when it rains. My roof still leaks a little in the spring. And I have never been more at peace than I am right now. Danny, if you are listening somewhere, your little girl is doing just fine. And your old man finally figured out that keeping a promise is not just about writing checks. It is about showing up. Every single day. Now let me ask you something before we wrap up here. Have you ever been in a situation where you gave and gave and gave only to discover that your kindness was being misused? Or maybe you are in that situation right now, and you are not sure what to do about it. I would really love to hear your story, so drop it in the comments below. Let us talk about it. If this story touched something in you today, hit that like button so more people can find it. Subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more stories about real people facing real situations with courage and dignity. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, share this video with them. Sometimes the right words at the right time can change everything. Thank you for spending this time with me. I mean that sincerely. Take care of the people you love, but never forget to take care of yourself too. You matter just as much. I will see you in the next one.